Hey, it's the debut episode of Roots Music Rambler. Today you'll learn who we are, why we're here, and what you're going to learn about the artists, writers, musicians, fans, and more as we explore more than who influenced them. We're going to explore the what, why, and where as well. So get a bourbon, pop a squat, buckle up. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up. All right. So you think that this Oliver Anthony character was like a prepackaged thing, and this was all planned? Was that right?
That's not what I think. It's something that I read about.
On Fox News?
No. No. So I am in Facebook music groups and stuff like that. And some people are really serious about things. Some people are more casual. Honestly, I didn't know about Oliver Anthony until you sent me that clip of him. I don't know, however long ago. And I was like, who is this? Right. Like, and you're like, he's blown up. He's all over the place. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had no prior knowledge. And then all of a sudden he starts popping up on like all sorts of news outlets, and our local news here in Chicago did a clip on him, or a segment. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe this guy is the real thing. Admittedly, I did not pay too much attention to like the entire song. I knew the basics, I caught the gist of the message. But I didn't really give it a thorough listen. And then I started seeing people, especially on social media, posting about how, like comparing him to other country artists, and not in a flattering way.
Yeah.
And then, saying how he was planted, right? Like the story of how he just came out of nowhere. And like this has been planned, right? And especially like it's a more of a right-wing sort of thing.
Lord.
And then I'm like, do people really think this, or could this be possible? Like, I don't know. And on the other hand, I don't know if I really care. But what I do know is that, dude's got a good voice. I like the rawness of it. The song is catchy. And who doesn't love like just like this sort of not rags to riches, but like this undiscovered talent that just shows up one day,
It's a good
who doesn't love
story.
those feel good stories?
Yeah.
So I want to believe that he came out of nowhere. And then I hate that everything, even some ginger dude in the woods singing about, how the world has wronged him, has to come with such like this political strife, and I hate that. But then I hear like these, like how people were saying that this was, planned and all that. I can't help but think about it. Well, could it have been? And I mean, anything's possible, right? So yeah, I don't know that I believe that it was planned, but it certainly entered my
here's my, I mean, first of all, when I first heard the song, I was like, this is really catchy. This is speaking to a generation and a segment of our population. So it's going to catch on. And I didn't find him before he blew up. It was like in the middle of the blow up. I think it was the second day after he kind of uploaded the thing to iTunes. Anyway, so I started going back and looking at his old TikToks and his older music. And I was like, oh, this guy's a good singer songwriter. Like he's got talent. He's got a couple songs that are even funny. I always appreciate somebody who can come out with a good, tongue in cheek kind of song too. So I was really kind of getting into him and whatnot. And the thing that really has resonated with me is it took him a while after he blew up, as we could all probably appreciate, that he was like, holy crap, dumbstruck by all this stuff.
Sure.
But about a week later, he came out and him recording a video, sitting in the front of his truck. And it was raining. You could hear the rain coming down on the roof of the truck. And he was like, hey man, It's been a while since I've talked to you guys, but here it is. And if you watch that whole video, I just think this guy's incredibly authentic. And if it's an act, he's the best goddamn actor I've ever seen. Because he just reeks of honest, real. You can tell from the stories he tells and the things that he writes, he's been through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And he feels for people like him who have been through the same shit. And it resonates with people. I can't help but think that this is a real, Robin Hood kind of story of this guy came out of nowhere and now he's a voice for a generation, which his generation needed a voice, frankly. There's several others out there. Tyler Childers, chief among them, I'm sure, but he's speaking the truth for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, so. Most definitely. And when we, if you examine the roots of, country music, folk music, a lot of the songs, coming out of even that part of the country were, against the government or against like the mining companies. And so it really fits in with that whole like storytelling. I don't want to say mold, but it fits, right? Yeah. So like I said, I hope that it is authentic, that everything about it is authentic, because we can always use a feel good story.
Here's what I'm waiting on. I'm waiting on the Oliver Anthony mashups to come out. I've seen people doing versions of the song, which is fine, but I came up with a mashup that I want to see. It's the music to Richmond, North Richmond, mashed up with the lyrics from the theme to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'm going to perform it for everybody. So brace yourself. Here we go.
Oh, my goodness.
You ready
Jason,
for this?
I don't have a drink. Okay, come on.
All right, here we go. I'm going to try it. Here we go. This is going to be podcast history right here on episode 1. Let me think. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground was where I spent most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing at school, shooting some b-ball outside. I forgot the lyrics. Anyway, I think that's a hell of a mashup right there, kids.
Somebody, yeah. Here's our next feel good story right here. Jason Falls, mashup maestro.
You can see how much of this is gone. That's where we are, and we're just starting.
Oh my goodness,
that would be fun. So I am not obviously not a singer, and I'm certainly not a musician, and I couldn't possibly do any of that. So if we have a fan out there listening to the podcast who can do that, do it, and we'll debut it here on the show, and we'll point everybody to your iTunes so you can make $40,000 a day. There you go.
Yeah, right. And then maybe we can make like $4 a day.
Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And we're rambling through on the stories behind the music we love.
Today on the show, we'll talk about the show, who we are, why we're here, and what you're going to hear, learn, and love just by hitting that subscribe or follow button and joining us each episode.
That's right. We sat down with country artist JD Shelburne to talk about his new album, Neon Hallelujah, but also dig into his roots and rambling from Taylorsville, Kentucky, all the way to the tops of the country charts.
And we'll share our weekly pickin'. We'll share our weekly pickin' the grinnin'.
Yeah, we're going to share our weekly pickin' the grinnin'. Tell them all about it.
What is that? What is pickin' the grinnin'? Come on now. I'm not from Kentucky.
Well, so we're going to share our weekly pickin' the grinnin'. We're going to share our picks for whose music is making us grin the most this week. Might be new artists, might be old artists, but they'll sure be good.
Oh, look at that.
All right, let's bring it back to center here. So before we kick all this off, though, I want everyone to know up front here that Roots Music Rambler, this is technically episode 1 of this iteration of it, but it's not the first episode of this podcast or the brand as a podcast. And it has a historic concept that comes from my co-host, Francesca Folinazzo. So, Frank, tell us about the concept of the show and how Roots Music Rambler came about.
I was living the life as a travel blogger, travel writer. Travel has always been a passion. Writing's always been something I enjoyed, and I was sort of good at. The other thing I love a whole lot is music. And I know that sounds generic, but like, I really enjoy the music, the craft, the writing portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that all started for me when I was like 10, and I'm totally dating myself, when Springsteen's Born in the USA album came out.
There you go.
I wore out that cassette tape in my bright yellow Walkman, and it was the first time that I got to see music as a means of storytelling. Okay. Up until that point, it was the mid 80s. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on the radio. But once I heard Born in the USA, the album, all of that other stuff just became noise, right? I started thinking, and I've always been an avid reader. So now I'm 10 years old, and I'm already thinking, well, songs are like, they tell stories, just like books do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I really, really, really became interested in the songwriting and storytelling portion of music. And I really never went back after that. I mean, of course, there are some pop songs and stuff that I get into, but fast forward decades, and I'm traveling and a lot, writing a lot, still listening to a lot of music, trying to keep up. And then I start discovering artists that sing about where they're from, where they grew up, places that have inspired them. Just like I remember thinking about Springsteen in the mid 80s. He sang about Darlington County. I had no idea where Darlington County, or where even it was, So, and I didn't know until I pulled up my World Book Encyclopedia and I looked it up. Because, yes, children, this was long before the internet.
Oh yeah,
So,
the old World Book, that was Internet 1.0.
that was my, aside from music, my World Book Encyclopedia set was my window to the world.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so then I started wanting to visit the places that these writers, artists were writing about and singing about. And I remember one such trip, like the first one I ever did was in 2004. So my favorite band nowadays is Sunvolt, and the legendary Jay Farrar is the front man, songwriter. Well, from their first album, Trace, which came out in 1995, is a song called Tear Stained Eye. And Jay wrote and sings about the town St. Genevieve in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I have to go to this town. Like, this song is incredible. And, I just love Sunvolt. I love Jay. And so I dragged my mom to St. Genevieve, Missouri. She and I went down there actually for a Cubs game against the Cardinals.
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
like, Mom, while we're here, we're going to St. Genevieve. And she's like, okay, what is that? So I was like off in my own world, and she was just following along. And so that was like like I said, that was 2004. And that was the first time I had the idea to do something like this. So what was it, like 2017? I'm like, and my travel blog was doing pretty well. I was pretty well established. I'm like, I need a side project. I need this side project. So I thought it through, came up with a name, Roots Music Rambler. And within like a couple of months of just the conceptualizing it, I had a gig to go over to Dublin, Ireland, and write about Tradfest, a huge traditional Irish music festival in Dublin. So I'm like, oh, this is it, right? And then the world closed a couple of years later, and that all just kind of went down the drain. But here we are now because of my good friend Jason here, who had the idea to resurrect it all.
Well, and let me tell you that story, because Frank and I met at a travel conference in 2016 or 17, about the same time Roots Music Rambler came about as a concept for her. So I knew she was doing it. And I grew up on John Prine. I grew up on Waylon Jennings. My stepdad had this real eclectic sort of, album collection. And so I listened to everything from John Prine to ZZ Top to the Beatles, etc. And so I had, and he and my mom went to, I think I saw John Prine live like 5 times before I turned 15 years old. And so I was exposed to this growing up, but I was a young kid. So, and it was the 80s. So I liked hair bands and shit. I didn't have an appreciation for good singer-songwriters, good country music, good Americana music until I got older. And then I started to really like remember all of these things that I was exposed to growing up. So I had this, like, I knew Roots Music Rambler was happening with Francesca, and I was paying attention to it because it reminded me of, you know, songs that I heard growing up and whatnot. And I really liked what she was doing. So I was following along. Well, the pandemic happened and it kind of faded away. And so fast forward to last, I think it was probably May or June of 2023. I'm literally, and I apologize for the visual. I'm sitting on the shitter and I'm listening on my phone to Tyler Childers' new album, Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven? And I'm literally listening to that song. And then it goes into, I think, you know, I listened to Hallelujah, Jubilee, or whatever, Angel Band. And so I'm listening to this album and I'm thinking, man, Tyler Childers' music has evolved so much in the last 4 or 5 years. Once Sturgill Simpson started producing his stuff, it just had a different sonic experience. It was bigger. The band was a bigger sound.
Yeah.
It wasn't just him and a guitar. And I was like, this would be really fun to sit and talk to somebody about. This would make a really good podcast episode. And as soon as that thought entered my mind, I immediately thought, oh shit, Roots Music Rambler. I got a crazy idea. So I literally jumped into a text or a Facebook message or something to Francesca and said, I've got a crazy fucking idea. Let's bring it back as a podcast.
You were texting me from the shitter?
I was on the shitter. Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know we were at that point in our relationship.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, great.
I was listening to music on the shitter. I had the idea. I had to get it I had to get it out in more ways.
You had to get it
apparently.
out there. Oh my goodness, that's great. I didn't know you were on the shitter.
Fast forward, you know, a couple of months, and here we are.
Here we are.
The first episode of the Roots Music Rambler revival.
It things started rolling, you know? And I'm so thrilled because this was, you know, the travel blogging had started out of a passion and it was just an outlet. You know, I had no intention of turning it into a career or a livelihood. But it kind of just took on its own life. And then the Roots Music Rambler blog and podcast sort of became like my passion project. So, you know, now that it's back and it's resurrected and it's 1,000 times better because of Jason's help, you know, I'm so excited. And like, I tell everybody who will listen, and most people don't care, but, you know, I'm truly excited and it makes me even more excited to go out and see live music, try to, discover some new acts locally, you know, and just talk to people and hear their stories.
Well, and we're going to talk more about what our plans are in terms of who's coming up, who we're going to see, and all that good stuff in our Picking the Grinning section, which comes up after the interview. So make sure you listen all the way through because we're going to talk about some of the artists we're listening to now. And one of the great things about this show, I don't claim to be a music expert, but I like to explore. I know Francesca likes to do that as well. And we're going to bring you artists you probably never heard of. Or our recommendations that we can put you on that you might like. So that's another great reason to listen to the show, especially that end segment where we say, okay, here's who I've been listening to lately. Here's who I'm going to see and all that good stuff. Now I am sipping on bourbon and I'm almost out. So we're going to take a quick break for a refill. Take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors and help make this show happen. This is Roots Music Rambler. So, JD, the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, you know, I'm a music fan. I'm not a music historian. I don't listen to traditional country radio. I listen to just artists that I like. And if someone were to ask me to describe your music, I would say that your music sounds like pop country. But I'm also one of those people who doesn't believe that there should be a rift between outlaw country and pop country and all that kind of stuff. So I just think it's good music. And if you like it, listen to it. How would you describe your sound to people?
I grew up on 90s country. And when I got in college, I listened to a lot of 90s rock. So I feel like I'm kind of a mix between both. I didn't start playing music until college. So, I listened to the radio, didn't play any guitar, didn't sing, but I just love what sounded good. And I was senior in high school in 2001 through about 2003. That's kind of when guitar came to my life. So back at that time, you're looking at Matchbox 20. Yep. Garth was kind of fading out a little bit. Then you had Jason Aldean on the scene, Keith Urban. Goo Goo Dolls were starting to kind of become a band and have some success. And so all those people kind of in one mold, and those kind of helped me, when I would teach myself to play songs and when I found guitar, it was like, what's popular? What can I learn? What can I sound like? And what can I sing? And so those would be my band, Hootie and the Blowfish, those folks. So if you mix like 90s country, pop country with some 90s rock, I really think I'm somewhere in between.
That's cool. Now tell us the story. You found a guitar when you went home for your grandmother's funeral. Is that right? That's the story I've heard.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school in Taylorsville in 2001, my dad was a principal. Mom stayed at home with me and my brother, my whole school life, and music was never a thought, man. It's wild. I mean, I played sports my entire life. I was on traveling ball teams. We played basketball in the fall, baseball in the summer. So when sport was ending, it was time to start the other, and they'd overlap a lot of the times. And so I never had any time to barely listen to the radio. But when I got in college, sports were kind of behind me. I'd graduated. I didn't play college sports. I just chose really. I honestly just didn't get a big enough offer to really say, okay, I want to do college basketball for 4 more years. I went to Kentucky to get a degree. And my parents back home were like, you got to go to college. If you want to be successful, you got to get a degree. We don't want you sitting around the farm. And so I went to college in 2001, right the second of high school, the second I graduated. Well, I was at UK living on campus for just a few months, and my grandmother back home passed suddenly. She wasn't sick. Didn't expect her death. And so went home for her funeral, and as we do when we go home for a loved one and for a funeral, you're around the family for 3 or 4 days. You attend the funeral, you go to the house, you have supper at the house. And while I was at her house, I found an acoustic guitar, and I knew she had an acoustic years and years ago because she bought it from my uncle for Christmas. And so when I found that guitar, I just kind of sports was behind me, and it was kind of a newfound hobby. And little did I know, but it changed my life.
I was going to say, you went from 19 years old picking up a guitar, having never played before, and I don't know how many years later you're launching a music career that's been pretty damn successful. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. It took me from about 2000, June of 2002 is when I found the acoustic. That's when my grandmother died. I didn't really start getting my feet wet playing shows till about 04, 05. I did play on college campus a couple times, open mic nights. Of course, back then that was a big deal. I look back at those. Those were just stepping stones for me to figure out, if I could entertain people, would I get nervous in front of crowds? And so you look from about 02 to 05 is really the gap it took me to really kind of get this off the ground.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, it was.
That's impressive.
Yeah, but it was like anything. You pick up something you love to do. You don't stop doing it. You find ways to get better. And to be honest with you, it was just the hustle and grind that kept me interested, trying to find gigs, trying to build fans. Everywhere you went, people wanted to see you play, or, if you can make somebody's sad day a happy day. When you bring that guitar out, start singing, it was just like an instant happiness for all my friends, my fans. And those kind of things just kind of kept me going.
At what point did you realize I'm going to do this? Like, if this is going to be my life, my career, I can make money doing this. How fast did that come?
It's kind of hard to remember that. I think back to, I played a lot of smaller gigs when I first started. People knew my name from sports back at home. People knew my family in my hometown. We have a big family back home. So once people started getting kind of word that I was playing music, they became interested. I'd get calls to play hay rides. The sheriff would call me when he was running for sheriff. I'd get the county judge would be running against the other county judge. I'd play both their parties, and the word started getting out. It was honestly, it was like I was like the only country singer within a 100-mile radius they could book, and I felt like I'd got every call for the longest time. And once I started. Once I got in college, I was kind of on the slope of graduating college, kind of like, do I want to go to Nashville? Do I want to live to Louisville for a while? And then I started playing some bars around Louisville, and I actually started packing every place I played. It was crazy, man. I mean, I wasn't making that much money back then. I mean, I was making just a few $100, but I felt like I was just having the time of my life, man. And that's when I kind of was like, man, I think I can give Nashville a shot and just see what happens. And sure enough, man, packed my bags in 2008 and moved down here in February and have never looked back.
That's absolutely crazy. Good for you. So I want to go back to the grandmother story a little bit, if you don't mind, because one of the things we're really interested in is not like the musicians or the artists that influence you, but the environment, the people. I wonder, did your grandmother play? Or what was music like in your life when you were a kid before you started playing?
Well, my grandmother did not play. She bought the guitar from my uncle, which I later found out after her death. I remember my uncle and my aunt keeping us when we were kids. They got married back in the early 90s, and we'd go stay at their house on the weekends every now and then. And he'd bring that acoustic out. He never could play it, but we just thought it was just something to do at home. As a kid, you became interested. I mean, it was years ago, and I may have looked at it, strummed the chords, but it's set in the case for years and years. But Mom sang in the church choir. Dad didn't sing at all. I did have a cousin named Guy Shannon. He was very successful. He was signed to Cinnamon Records in Nashville. Don't really remember him growing up that much. I mean, he was a distant, like, third cousin of me. I mean, once I got in the music business, moved to Nashville, I realized how big of a deal he was. But back when I was a kid, it was never talked about. But Mom sang in the choir. But one thing I remember about my parents is when we'd go to Reds games or we go to Kings Island or go on family vacation in Myrtle Beach, we would always control the radio. And it wasn't what Mom and Dad listened to. It was what we wanted to listen to. My brother Tommy and I, who's younger than me, it was always us, Billy Ray Cyrus, Alan Jackson, Garth, Clint Black, all those folks. We controlled the radio. So I think early on, country kind of got etched in my blood. Yes, on car trips and anything would involve a radio is kind of where music became prominent in my life. But like I said, I didn't even know I could sing, man. I did sing in high school. Like, one thing I tell people a lot is when I was a senior in high school, even from freshman to senior, we took school buses to all the games. And so you got to think, 2001, we had one cell phone in our whole family. Cell phones weren't a thing back then. You still had beepers and pagers. I didn't have one of those, but we had my parents. We had one. That's aging us, isn't it? We had one cell phone, and when I went out on a date or Mom went to the grocery, we shared that phone. We didn't have 4 phones. It just wasn't a thing back then. And when I was on the bus to school rides, we would play a boombox and we would just sing at the top of our lungs. And I think that's really where I started kind of like learn how to carry a melody, and I could tell I was on pitch or off key. And were those bus rides before guitar was even a thought. And so I think back to really where I got my start, and it had to be on the back of a school bus about 98 through 2001, just singing the CDs, man, Kenny Chesney, and all these ball games. We just thought we were rock stars and had no idea what rock star even meant.
It's definitely different than what crazy. I was doing on the back of school buses.
Yeah, exactly. I get it, man.
Anyway. So
wait, so you're a Reds fan?
Yeah, I'm a huge Reds fan. I've been a Reds fan my whole life. It was the closest sports team to my parents' house, and I think half the time we thought they were in Louisville. I just played a Reds game actually, so it was a cool moment for me.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I saw that. That was cool.
So my Cubs will be in Cincinnati on Friday. Just out there.
I went to a Cubs game. They had me at a Cubs game when I played in Chicago last month, and I went to a Cubs game. And my PR firm helped me get some like really awesome tickets to Wrigley because we'd never been. So I took my guys as a gift, and we're sitting there. And I don't have a Cubs jersey. I had a Mariners jersey on because I just wanted to wear a jersey to a baseball game. Well, this lady comes up behind me at Wrigley. She's like, "Hey, welcome to the game." She's with the Cubs organization. I was like, "Thanks so much." And she's like, "Have a great time." Well, about 10 minutes later, here comes the big Titantron camera, and they put me on the camera at Wrigley Field. and they're like, country artist JD Shelburne, I have a Mariners jersey on. I'm like, had I known, I would have wore a Cubs jersey. It was a cool moment though to be on Wrigley Field's big jumbotron. It was cool.
No kidding. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I put it on YouTube. It's on YouTube. You have to check it out. It was a cool moment.
Yeah, for sure.
But I had a Mariners jersey on, so if I would have known, I'd have spent $250 on a cool Cubs jersey. But I didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're representing the NL Central today because I'm a big Pittsburgh Pirates fan. So we got 3 of the 5 here. So
yeah, cool, man. Stuff. Yeah, a drummer played for me one time as a big Pittsburgh fan. He used to always talk about Pirates all the time.
Yeah, well, we don't have a whole lot to talk about most days, but
well, I get it, man. I've been a Reds fan my whole life, so I know what it feels like.
Well, I've been, I grew up in Kentucky too, so I've followed the Reds. My uncle used to take me to Reds games when I was a little kid. So, but my dad lived in Pittsburgh growing up, so that's
cool, man.
How I came to know the Pirates. So your dad was, I think you said your dad was a principal and your mom stayed home. Your mom was a teacher before kids, right? Yeah,
she was. And then once we went to college and got out of high school, she went back to school. She just retired in January from teaching. So she was in special education at school. So she I think she just wanted to be home with us. We were always on the road, and we actually live on a farm too. So we were raising tobacco my whole childhood. So, they were working tobacco, and when we get home from school or in between school and practice, we'd be cutting tobacco, and mom had to hire the help, and so she worked, so she didn't sit around all the time, but she took care of us growing up and packing our baseball bags, and we had washing our uniform before games. I mean, you talk about a rock star mom. My mom was it, still is. And so, but yeah, dad has been in education my whole life, and he retired back, I want to say 05, 06. And so I was raised that, man, you got to do your homework first, and if you don't, you will pay the consequences.
Oh yeah.
Paid off.
So tobacco farm, and your parents farmed it. Like they weren't just educators. They farmed the land too, huh?
Oh yeah, man. We live on about 100 acres of property, and my whole life from the time I can remember to college, when we moved to college and moved to Nashville, Dad, we raised tobacco every summer. It was something my grandpa did for years and years. My dad was a kid, and he kind of passed it down to my dad, and my dad continued it on until really tobacco didn't sell it, and we didn't make as much money off of it as we used to. And it was actually harder to find help. And so once my brother and I call it, got smart and went to college and moved off the farm, my dad realized he just couldn't find dependable help. And so, trying to find good help. And then, it wasn't selling. It was a lot harder to sell. I think he just decided to finally give it up. But to be honest, man, those days made me a man, man. I tell you what, the tobacco was tough work. And I think back to those days when I'm sweating on stage and out working everybody else is sick. I'm like, man, those days is how I made it. Right, today is how I made it. Days because of those old days on the farm. So I'm grateful for those times.
Well, do you have any songs about the tobacco farm?
Oh, so many. I mean, my whole catalog. I have 6 albums out. I mean, you can literally just walk through my life off my records. I've talked about my grandfather's truck, and I've just got so many stories that my music shaped.
Well, and one of the reasons that I earlier asked the question about how you describe your sound, because I would describe it as more pop country, which is not necessarily what a Roots music podcast would get into. But I love the fact, and the reason I wanted you to be one of our first guests was because when you go through that catalog, like you are telling the stories that good lyricists tell about who they are, where they're from, what shaped them. I believe Farmtown was that your first album? I think
that was my second. Yeah, it came out. My first album was self-titled, and it came out in 12, and then Farmtown came out in 14. So I was pretty new to Nashville those first 2 albums.
And so Farmtown had Grandpa's Truck on it, which was I just love that song. It made me think of my grandfather, and so
thank you.
But like you've got. You on every album, there's 5 or 6 songs they just scream Taylorsville, or for me, small town in Kentucky, right? That's the fabric of what you write about.
It is, man. I wouldn't change it for the world, man. I meet so many people along the way that I've met just through music that sing about small town but never lived in one, and it's just like it's hard to like how do you fake that, but there's people out there that do, and growing up in Taylorsville, man, that's why I go back every couple of years, do a free show in town, give back to my hometown fans. We don't charge a dime for it. And I feel like I lived the ultimate childhood as a Southerner. My parents have been married, gosh, almost over 40 years. I grew up with all my grandparents and my brother, and we went to church every time the doors were open. And when we weren't in church, we were playing sports. And I lived a great childhood. And so small town had a big part of that. And I still think about, those days, even when I'm living in Nashville and trying to teach my son what it's like to get dirty every now and then. He has no idea right now, man. I mean, I grew up where you could walk right out back and get on a tractor and drive to Dairy Queen at 7 years old on a tractor because it was legal. And it's think about that. It's like I don't think I trust my son on a power wheel right now. And it's just like it's amazing how much small towns changes you, the way of life, and just just a lot of good people come from my small town. So I love to talk about it. It's all I know. I mean, what else is there to talk about?
Now, were you like me when you were a kid? Did you and your brother have a bike and you'd get on your bike and ride wherever you wanted to go in town?
Yeah, man. Sure did, man. We used to do all that stuff. Ropes went build. We actually lived. We didn't live on the farm my whole life. We moved up to the farm in '99. My grandfather and my grandma and grandpa had kind of gotten in bad health, and my dad kind of wanted to see the farm kept in the family, and so we had moved up on the farm in '99, built a home on the farm. But before that, we lived up on Stevens Lane. It's still there, man. And we used to hang out with my neighbors, ride bikes, and just do so much fun stuff, man. And those were the days, man. We all had those.
Yeah, you bet. Don't go away. We've got more with JD Shelburne. This is Roots Music Rambler. So I wanted to talk about the new album. It came out in, I believe, July or late June, one of the two. I've seen so many performances from the Kentucky State Fair. I know you're doing something this coming weekend with the Evans Williams Experience, and you've been all over the place. I can't tell you how many times I've seen you perform some of these songs.
Thank you, man.
But I wonder, this is album number 6 for you. What's your writing process like these days? Are you writing while you're on the road? Do you go to the studio and write it all in one place? What's the process for you to put these things on paper and then get them on the recordings?
Most of the time, I write during the week when I'm home. When I'm on the road, I feel like my brain's just on a brain fog. I'm trying to focus on where's the next stop. What are we doing tonight? Where's the show? What time's it start? And I mean, I've tried to write on the road, and I can sometimes, but I feel like I'm better. Like it's more of a clean slate for me when I come home Sunday night, can rest the day, than Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now since pandemic, we're writing on Zoom. I stay here at the house and I write on Zoom. It's wild, man. But I've just got so many ideas, or I'll hear somebody tell me something in a meet and greet, or some little title that sticks in my mind. They say, like the other day, I had a lady come up to me and she said, it was called Raised on the Good Stuff. I was like, man, she goes, you were raised on the good stuff. And I'm like, man, that's a great song title. You could talk about 90s country, yep, grandma's cooking. I mean, and so I actually have a writing session tomorrow morning with a guy named Rob Simbeck, he's wildly successful here in Nashville. And I sent him the title, and he's like, I've already got lyrics for it. So, I feel like I just talking to people gives me ideas. Yeah. And then I'll write stuff down, and then I'll try to meet during the week on just write stuff. I mean, I've written a lot of bad songs, but I've written a few good ones that I play live.
What's your favorite song off the new album so far?
Probably, a couple. If you ask me my favorite song, I got to record with the Oakridge Boys, so I'm gonna have to say that's my favorite song. I got to cut "Amazing Grace" with the Oakridge Boys. I don't know if you can see it behind me or not. No, it's you can't see it. I'll turn my camera. That's the lyric sheet. That's our studio. That day they signed a lyric sheet they used, and so I had that framed. That's awesome. But yeah, Oakridge Boys number 1. My favorite song on the record is a song I did not write. It's called Panama City Six Pack, and my old neighbor Mark Nessler has written a ton of hits, and he sends me demos, and I hear songs that's never been cut, and I heard this song, and I'm like, man, this is a smash hit, man. Golly, can I record this? And he said, yeah, and so I did, and it's a banger, and I'm really excited about it. People are loving it, and it's it's been popular for us on our live set.
That was the last live recording that I saw from the state fair.
Yeah, I put that on. Yeah, we put that online. Yeah, we cut our whole set that day, but we just, I don't know. It's like summertime. I love going to the beach with my wife, and it's like, you know, what's funny is I cut a song called Panama City Beach, but I don't think I've ever been to Panama City Beach. We go to Destin, Seaside, Perito Key, we everywhere but Panama City. So I think I got to go to Panama City.
All right. Well, we're gonna cut this and send it to the Panama City newspaper so that they can out you.
Let's do it.
So I want to my favorite. I'm going to tell you my favorite song off the album, frankly, and it actually ties back into kind of what we're talking about with your lyrics and being from a small town and whatnot. The song "Listening In."
Oh yeah, thank you, man.
I love that song because, and I don't know if you've ever been to Pikeville. I would imagine you have at some point. But anybody who's ever been to my little small town in Eastern Kentucky, there's a Jerry's restaurant there, and in the mornings during the week, that's where, you know, all the old fogies from town would meet and have their coffee. Yeah. And if you went at a certain time, or if you went after the football game on Friday night, because everybody would gather there and eat after the football game, all the old folks would sit in this one little corner and you know, reminisce about the good old days or whatever. And I remember specifically going in there for that reason, to sit and listen to what they had to say, because I was really fascinated with their stories. And that, I mean, I could have written that song. I can't write songs, but I could have written the lyrics. That happened to me. And that's the kind of small town experience that I think your music kind of brings out and shares with the world, because I can identify with 90% of what you're writing there.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was actually the last song I put on the record. And speaking of Rob Simbeck, I'm actually writing with him in the morning. Him and I wrote that song. And I started testing it live, and I grew up in Taylorsville. The only thing we had was we had like a Linda's Grill. We had a couple little small town diners, but Dairy Queen was a place to go for breakfast. And like every time you'd walk in Dairy Queen, you'd see like those 10 old men over there in the corner reliving the glory days. And it's just like, you know, and then, you know, I've written, it's like we all have those spots, but like I played in Shelby County, Kentucky it's probably a couple years ago, one night, and I played a private event for the Humane Society. I think it was some event. It was up in this really nice, elegant, like loft, and it was all decorated nicely. And I was just the entertainment. And so I played the show, and this guy came up to me. He had a few too many to drink. And he's like, "Have you ever written a song about the liar section in a Dairy Queen?" I'm like, "Dude, you hit the nail right on the head." And I went home that next week, and I was like, this guy approached me about told Rob the story. Rob and I write a lot together, and we wrote that song, man, and I tested it out live, and I recorded it and decided to put it on the record kind of last minute. And I'm so glad I did. It's actually a very fun song to play live, because I can tell my story of how I wrote it. We mentioned Heaven Hill in it. I remember when all that went down, and then of course some of my family lived at the Taylorsville Lake, lived where the dam was built. You know, they were forced to move, and you know that was devastating for family back. Yeah. And
speaking of Heaven Hill,
yeah, exactly. And so, you know, it's just devastating stories that people I think still talk about. And you know, I feel like that generation of older people is kind of fading. You know,
yeah.
You walk in these old restaurants, you just don't see those people talking about the old times anymore, and it's really sad to see.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, I mean, as much as I love technology and I love the fact that we're able to, we're all three sitting in our homes in different cities and different time zones and everything, having this video audio conversation. I love technology. But when you say that, what it makes me think of is not only is that not happening as much anymore, it's not going to happen in the future either, because everybody's locked into their device. They're not having conversations. They're not building real world memories. It's all virtual.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a sad state of affairs. So there's another song you can go right now. So
it is sad, man. You hate to hear it that way, but you know, it's just, it's wild. You don't realize how fun life was when you didn't have phones, and you know, you went out and you played a baseball game, or you played a pickup basketball game, or you know, there's just so many good times I had growing up. You know, back in the day, you just went and cruised in your truck, you know, and listened to your new CD you bought at Walmart. I mean, those you don't realize how special a time that was, you know. And it's just like now it's, you know, some of these rental cars I rent on the road don't even have CD players anymore. It's wild.
Well, you're dating yourself, but I'm going to date us. I think Frank was cassette tapes. I think she went back. I go back to 8 tracks, baby.
Oh, so do I.
I had REO Speedwagon High Infidelity, baby, in my 8-track player. So
yeah, I remember Dad having a couple $3 night 8-tracks when we were kids. We had no idea what 8-track was. We came out. It was cassettes when I was a kid, and then it moved into CDs. And you get that CD, and and you forget to put it back in the case. It'd scratch up, then it wouldn't work again. Yep. It's just like we hated that. And then Napster came along. We all downloaded songs for free. Then I remember my dad sat me, my brother and I down one night and says, "You're going to get us arrested if you keep pirating music." We're like, what's pirating music mean? And so Dad made us stop downloading music on Napster in like '99. So it was funny.
That's good. Well, that's kind of. I'm glad your dad did that, because I'd hate to think that here you are, a big artist, depending on people buying your music, and you were a big pirater. So that's good.
I know. We didn't know what we were doing. We were like, it's free. What pay for what? We didn't know.
Guilty.
I know, right? We all were.
Yeah, I think I may have been next on their list of people to arrest and stop arresting people.
Let me ask you this: is there somebody in prison right now that got arrested for pirating songs off Napster? Surely not. I mean, that's a great story. If so,
I wouldn't think they're in. There's probably some people who did a little bit of time, but I think they're clear now.
It's like, what'd you do to get in here, bro? Oh man, I downloaded that new Goo Goo Dolls record in '99. I'm still not out. I can't even imagine. Imagine.
Yeah, Iris is what did it for me. Put me in a pen.
Oh man,
isn't that Johnny Resnick?
I know it, right? I love it.
So, I'd love to hear your take on this, because I love to think about and listen. I like to listen to an artist's catalog, and I kind of obsess with going in order and listening to things like that. And I'm always trying to pick out what I think the evolution of their music is. They started out sounding this way, and now they sound this way, and how that happened. How would you describe your evolution? Has your music changed much since your first album, in your opinion? I think it has a little bit, but not like holistically. And why has it changed?
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot, to be honest. My voice has changed. I found my sound. I moved to Nashville in February of 2008. I had played quite a bit of gigs. I built up a little fan base. Wasn't too big, but I built up a fan base and built up a bunch of friends that followed me in college. And I thought I had a pretty legit shot of making a living doing this. And I look back at my first album in 2012. I actually put out a demo record in about 2000, I'd say 6, 7. And it was just a bunch of karaoke songs, really me singing my favorite songs. And it's funny, man. Like about 6 months ago, a guy came to my meet and greet in Lawrenceburg at my show. He goes, "Hey man, I got something for you." And I was like, "You look really familiar." And he brought me a CD that he replicated from 2006, my very first demo. Ooh. And I cut it in his basement. And he was like, "You don't know how honored I feel to where you've gotten, to know I was the first person that ever recorded you." Wow. And I'm like, man, I said, I won't forget that. I said, I had no idea even what reverb even meant, in microphones and stuff. And I look back at that album and listen to it in my truck, man, it was horrible. I was embarrassed. I didn't even, I'm like, I'm going to pay that dude to never share that, because it was bad. And then I moved to Nashville in 2008. I was still singing cover songs. I was still technically a cover band, trying to build my name. And then I did a couple really big shows, opened up for Steve Wariner and Joe Nichols at Louisville Waterfront about 2009. I think it was about 15,000 people there. It was a really big gig. And Steve told me, he said, "Man, if you want to get to the next level, start singing your own songs." Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's good advice. Mm-hmm. And so, after a few different years of just hounding the road and making money, saving money, I put out an album. And, it was songs I'd written written with friends and stuff like that. I didn't really know any big time songwriters. I didn't really know any well-known studio musicians. So I ended up finding a guy that played every instrument and put it in, played my songs. And it was great. I had a hometown release party. About 1,000 people showed up. And back then, man, I was like, man, I've made it. This is crazy. And I built off that, man. I put a record in 12, 14, 16, 18. Past COVID, we put one out in 22, and then or in 21, and we just put one out in 23. So every year, man, every 2 years, I've just gotten better. My songs have gotten better. I moved next door to a #1 hit songwriter a few years ago. I was recording his songs, and then he started writing with me, teaching me how to write good hooks. And it's crazy to watch the evolution of of my music and my voice. But I feel like the more you practice, the more you sing, the more you shoot basketball, the better player you're going to be. Just like, the more gigs I play, the more confident I become my vocal range. And I feel like now I could sing at the White House if they'd call me. I mean, I've literally done everything. I mean, I've played in front of thousands of people, and I've been in front of some of the most successful people in the world, and just trying to share my story and trying to win them over. And, just being on the road and singing songs and just practicing and playing gigs has really kind of kept me going.
Well, you've got tenacity, and you don't stop, which is awesome. And that energy is going to take you a long way for sure, even further than you are now. I'm curious, in that evolution, is there anyone specific that has taught you more as you've grown as an artist? Who have you learned from?
When I moved, I lived in an apartment in Brentwood for a while, several years. I worked a couple of daytime jobs during the day, make ends meet. I mean, I was actually making more money playing music than working my day job. It was wild. But I wanted to live in Brentwood because I always heard that was where songwriters lived and stuff. But it was, as you know, I don't know if you know anything about Brentwood. It's expensive,
pricey.
And so I worked at an insurance company for several years, and it's funny. I lived off my insurance money and banked my music money, and once I moved to Brentwood, I started meeting other songwriters, and then I met this guy named Bob Stewart. To be honest, we don't even talk anymore. I got so busy with touring, and we still talk. We don't write anymore, I should say. But he really helped me take a really bad song to a pretty decent song. And he was a good writer too. And him and I kind of worked together in 12 and 14, way early on. And he helped me put together a couple of albums. We'd write together, once a month and stuff. And then I left Brentwood, and I had met my wife at the time, and we bought a house in Hermitage. And we ended up, back before we bought the house, I moved next door to a number one writer. His name is Mark Nessler. So if I look at like connecting the dots, Bob and Mark would connect dots, because Mark had lots of success. He had written hits for Tim McGraw. He had written hits for George Strait. He wrote number ones for George Strait. He wrote the title track to the Gwyneth Paltrow movie, Country Strong. He wrote that song. I mean, he had written so many huge hits that I grew up singing in college. It was wild. And he was building a house in Franklin the same time I lived beside him in an apartment. And so I ended up getting I lived in a one bedroom for a while, got a 2-bedroom, moved next door to him while he was building his house, and just happened to meet him at the right place, right time. And the funny thing about that is, coming to Nashville as an unsigned artist, Daddy wasn't a star, Mama didn't sing at the Opry. I was literally starting from grassroots. And they told me, you got to start writing with hit writers. Well, there's no such thing as trying to find. It's like, you can't just call up a hit writer and say, "Hey man, I'm Jason Falls, just got to Nashville. You want to write?" They hang up on you. Well, when you move next door to one and you become friends, it's like they kind of believe in you and they want to help you. And that's how Mark did. Mark took me under his wing and started to teach me to write. Wrote with him a lot. Didn't want to bug him, but I wrote with him every time he'd call me, be right over. It was never cancel. And he helped me. He's helped me produce my records from 2016, 18, and the last 4. And I got on CMT because of him, because my writing improved. I had great songs. He knew people in the business, and then he would bring me in the room with his other hit writers. So it was a win-win for us, man. And so, I think back from Bob Stewart and early on to Mark Nessler, and so go on and so forth, man. I've just met so many people on the way, and now I'm at a point in my career where I've done great for myself, and I've been able to help other people that I was there in their shoes at one time. And so it's funny how full circle moments happen in the music business, because doesn't matter how successful you get, somebody's going to call you and ask you for advice, and I love giving it.
Do you have a wish list of writers that you would like to collaborate with?
Yeah, gosh. Well, some of the biggest, there's a guy from Kentucky named Ashley Gorley. He's written like 50 number ones. I want to say he was born in Kentucky. I mean, he wins like Songwriter of the Year down here. I've never recorded one of his songs. I've never met him. Ashley Gorley, Shane McAnally, Craig Wiseman, those 3 are like the 3 kings, man. I mean, they're writing number ones. Like, I mean, I swear between those 3, I'd say they have 1 to 3 songs on the chart every time it comes out.
Wow.
And I feel like their songs are number one for a reason, because they're good writers. So if I could pick, they'd be one of those three for sure.
Don't go away. We've got more with JD Shelburne. This is Roots Music Rambler. So you've got a 3-year-old.
Yep.
And you're on the road a lot, obviously. You kind of spelled out earlier that you're kind of home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you kind of go out for the weekends.
Yeah.
But what's it like pursuing this kind of lifestyle, this kind of career, having a wife and a young son at home? That's got to be a lot to juggle.
It is, man. My wife and I, she's been my biggest fan for a long time. We met in 2010. And so she's been on the road with me. She's sold my merchandise. She's fired people. She's chased bad checks a couple times from different clients. And now I could write a book, man. And now that Jax has been born, she stays at home with him. And so it actually makes me want to rush back home faster. It makes it coming home even sweeter. We FaceTime now with Jax, and I'm gone quite a bit, but I'm also home a lot. And so there are lots of shows where, like for instance, we played the Reds game a couple weeks ago. Got to bring them to that. Jax got to be the little nugget of the game. So I've been able to incorporate Jax in a couple shows. I swear he's a bigger rock star. Jax has fans. It's wild how many fans my son has, and all he does is just poops in his diapers. It's like he's got more fans than me. But it's funny though. We're having a blast with it, and luckily I have a really good wife that understands my career, knows how important it is, knows I'm going to be gone, knows I got to entertain people, and there's no jealousy. And I feel like there can be a lot of jealousy in the music business. You're in front of a lot of women. Play in front of crazy crowds that throw stuff at you that are in for a good time. And she's been, she knows I'm faithful, and she knows that whose house I come home to every night. So I've a lot of the music business. I have a lot of friends that are single. That it's hard for your partner to understand. You have to win over fans every night, and you just got to know your boundaries. And so, luckily, I was raised right, and my wife and my son are my number one priority. And so, when the shows are over, I'm in the car, I'm in the bus, we're heading home. So I live an exciting life, but I tell you what, music career makes my life go way too fast. And Jax is 3 next month. I feel like he was just born. It's wild.
Oh yeah. I just sent one to college, dude.
Gosh, don't even say that.
Yeah.
You serious?
Yeah.
And he was not okay.
No, I was not okay. And it was actually right down there. He's at Belmont in
nice.
Nashville.
Awesome. And great place for him to be.
It is. And he wants to be in the music business too. So at some point, maybe we'll cross paths, but
I'm sure.
The Belmont has a matriculation ceremony. And I was fine until the part of the ceremony where they have all of the new students, the freshmen, stand up and say a blessing over the parents. And then the parents say a blessing over the kids. And then the administration says a blessing over the families. I lost it. I was absolutely just in a pool of tears. I
bet, man.
Couldn't take it.
Is it a private institution?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Belmont's very, very highly respected. I met songwriters. I met people in the business. I mean, anybody that's on Music Row right now, I would say 75% of them are Belmont grads. I mean,
well, your PR girl's a Belmont grad.
That's exactly right.
She and I were talking about it as we were talking about getting you on the show. So yeah, it's a great school, and I'm really, really happy for him.
She's a great person to know too. So keep her on your back pocket.
Oh, don't you worry. We're interviewing people for a living here, so she's going to be on speed dial. Don't you worry.
Yeah, you got a good connection. I hired her actually for my new record. I was with another PR firm for about 4 years, and just want something new to kind of freshen things up. And I hired her, so she's been wonderful. So,
well, hey, real quick before you go, what's your take on this old Oliver Anthony character?
Man, they said he's making $40,000 a day. Now, do you believe that?
What?
$40,000 a day?
I don't believe anything I read online anymore.
I don't either.
I mean, I've heard the stories about how he turned down money for the Super Bowl.
I don't believe that.
I saw the exact same story with Jason Aldean like 2 days later. So
I don't believe that. I mean,
do you really think he came out of nowhere, or was this like he had this, like, this has been in the works for a while, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I think this guy, because I've watched his TikToks, went back and looked at him, and he literally goes out in the woods and plays his music and whatnot. And now he did a good recording of that song and whatnot, so he was moving in that direction.
Yeah.
I got faith here. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think this kid just had a really good song. He's been working on his music for a while.
Yeah.
And it hit a chord with people.
Yeah, it's wild, man. The song did make me laugh. It was very catchy. Just his anthem, the way he sings it, and it's like, it's like he's pissed off at everybody, but and it makes sense. The song makes sense. I mean, it's like, it's like we've all been there. And the fudge round, the fudge round part of the song, man. I mean, who doesn't like a fudge round every now and then? I mean, I'm guilty of that, right. But it's like,
I owe my physique to that bitch, Little Debbie. So,
exactly.
What's a fudge round?
So do you know what an oatmeal cream pie is? Basically, it's like an oatmeal cream pie, but it's like chocolate fudge.
Okay.
So basically the same. It's like the same idea, but it's just chocolate fudge. And the song, it's funny how he says like they don't tax the fudge rounds on people, or I don't know what he says exactly, but I don't know. I find it. I mean, there are things that happen that just that go viral and stuff. I've seen people. I know people that's went viral, but they said he made $40,000 a day. I mean, that could be true. I mean, there's a lot of money to make in the music business, but $40,000 a day, can you imagine?
Well, he's not making that all off of streaming. I mean,
no way.
No, there's no way. I did see something that impressed me, and I know he's come out with a couple of videos where he's like, I'm not going to sign with a big record company, and I'm not going to do this because that's not what it's about. And if that's true, if that's really him, then good on him. But one of my favorite comedians in the world is Tom Segura, and he's down in Austin, Texas, and he was doing a local show there, working on material or whatnot. And he and his people apparently flew Oliver Anthony in, and he was like a surprise musical guest at a comedy club last night or the night before.
Oh, I think I saw it on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
Joe Rogan, wasn't it?
Yeah. Something like that. So I was like, oh, that's very cool that he's making.
Did you see it? Did you get to see it?
I did. I saw just a little clip of Tom introducing him, and then it cut off. I didn't see the performance, but he came out. He's got another guitar player kind of playing rhythm with him or something now. So he's a little bit bigger. We'll see.
I can tell you one thing. He'll get a lot of work. He'll get a lot of tour dates and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was probably making like $400 or $500 a night. Now he's probably making like $8,000, $12,000 a show or something solo. Yeah. Maybe more than that. Who knows?
Man, well, good for him. Good for him.
Right.
I mean, we are music fans, and I don't care what the story is. I don't care if it was set up. I don't care if it's a ruse. It's good music. People identify with it, and we should celebrate it.
Amen.
JD, man, we'll let you go, buddy. I appreciate this.
Yes, sir, man.
But, man, I really wanted to have you on for all the reasons I told you, and big fan. Love what you're doing. Can't wait to see you blow up and
Thanks, man.
Selling out arenas, man.
Yeah, let me know what I can do to help you guys share, and when you get this out, let us at least know, and I'll blast it on my socials so my fans can hear this and get them on your bandwagon too, man.
All right, welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. This is my favorite segment of the show because this is where Frank and I talk about the what we're listening to and where we're going and all that good stuff. So if you're going there too, then come up and say hey and stuff because we like that. Just please don't grab my beard. You can touch it. But let
or
me
your
know
butt.
Well, you can grab my butt all you want. I don't care about that. The beards, it hurts a little bit. So you got too many people tug on that. Anyway, so Frank, what you got coming up? Who you first of all, who you listening to? Who have you discovered recently that you like?
Oh, who am I listening to? Much to my teens' amusement, I've been listening to some Boy Genius.
Oh, whoa.
Yep, love it. Love the sound, love the melodies. And you know what I kind of love about it? That it's not like, it's not always a happy ending, right? It's kind of realistic. But no, I'm digging Boy Genius. Who else am I listening to? Can't wait for the new Tyler Childers album.
Oh.
who else? Oh, Morgan Wade. Morgan
Okay.
Wade put out a new album that was released last Friday. A lot of people I know who are into Morgan Wade are not happy with this release because it doesn't sound like her previous album. And sometimes I fall in that category, right? Like I can be a bit gatekeepy, but I'm excited though. Like I listened to it and I paid close attention and I'm like, I really dig this. Yeah, it's not as like twangy as the last album, but you know, she writes all her own songs, writes all the lyrics. And she works with Sadler Vaden, who is a guitarist in Jason Isbell's band, the 400 Unit.
Gotcha.
So you know he's so talented, and she's got a whole, you know, on this album. There's a whole lot of other collaborators. Natalie Hemby. Who else? Oh, I think Derry DeBorja is on the album too. He's also from the 400 Unit.
Okay.
So yeah, I really dig in the new Morgan Wade album, Psychopath. And who else am I listening to? There was another big one that came out. Turnpike Troubadours.
Yes.
I have not really dived into that yet. Have you?
I haven't. Well, yeah, I have actually. I have because a couple of weeks ago, my good buddy Joe Ray Thornberry, I've known this guy all my life. He calls me every now and then and says, "Hey man, I got an extra ticket to go see so and so." And I saw Justin Townes Earl for the first time with him. I saw Old Crow Medicine Show for the first time with him. Like he'll just randomly call me, and we have the same taste in music, and we'll just go somewhere together because he's got tickets, and I don't even know when. It's like he'll call me the day before. And he called me a couple of weeks ago, and he's going, "Hey, I got Turnpike Troubadour tickets at the Ryman. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I want to go." And I committed. I said yes. This was like on a Tuesday, and then I had a big client thing that popped up, and I couldn't go. And so I was pissed, but that week I was listening to their new stuff. So it's good. And I would definitely recommend if you even if you don't know the Turnpike Troubadours, go check the new album out because that's awesome. Now, and actually one of the benefits of not going to the Turnpike Troubadours show, I had this work thing, a big project that I had to do, but I made myself that night go out to dinner with the woman who turned out to be my new girlfriend. Now, Karen is her name, and she's not a Karen. She's my Karen. So it's a different Karen. But she is a huge Drive-By Truckers fan. And I know you got the poster, right? That's the first thing she said when she saw what we were doing. She's got a Drive-By Truckers poster. I like her. So she's a huge Drive-By Trucker. So I've been reinvigorating my knowledge and understanding and familiarity with the Drive-By Truckers. So that's been the last couple of weeks for me.
Good stuff.
It is good stuff.
I'm going to see them in a couple of weeks, by the way. But
you are. Where are you going?
Bloomington, Illinois.
Okay. All right. Very good. So Drive-By Truckers, that'll be a good show. I'm sure at some point I will see them, probably multiple times, knowing.
It seems like they're always touring. I mean, yeah. I have seen them in the last, since the world opened up again. I've seen Drive-By Truckers, I don't even know, like at least a dozen times. Well, so you'll have plenty of chances. Yep.
I think if we ever do a meet and greet, the main dude there, the lead singer guy,
Patterson,
that's my competition apparently.
Oh, well, Karen and I are, we're going to have to talk.
Oh, jeez.
He's my hall pass.
That's what I need in my life is women drama. Anyway, so
did you hear what I said?
Yeah. My work wife and my girlfriend are going to,
we're both leaving you for Patterson Hood.
This podcast was a bad idea. I can tell you right now. My God. Anyway, so yeah, I've been doing that. And I've also been, Old Crow Medicine Show's got a new album out. I've listened to 2 songs. I like what I've heard so far, but I'm going to dive into that this week as well. But the other act that Karen is a big fan of is Ryan Adams. And she has traveled the world, literally gone to like Ireland to see him play, or Scotland rather, to see him play. And I lucked into in this newfound relationship. She had 4 tickets to see Ryan Adams in October at Red Rocks, and her cousin can't make it. So I get to go see Ryan Adams at Red Rocks.
Shut up.
So yeah,
I hate you.
Mid-October.
October, November. You said November. I can't imagine Red Rocks in November.
It's October. Okay. It's October like 16th. I think it's like a Monday, but we're going to Red Rocks to see Ryan Adams, which I'm very excited about. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And we're also going to see SG Goodman, which I'm hoping we can get her on the show.
Yeah, she's great too.
She's a great singer-songwriter from Kentucky.
Yep.
Got to shout out my Kentucky girls. And we're going to see her in November. When she comes through Louisville. So nice. I'm excited about all those, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more. So stay tuned to the picking the grinning part, or grinning the picking part, whatever we'll call this segment.
Pick the grin the pick. I don't know.
We're stay tuned to this, because you'll hear who we're listening to and where we're going to go see folks live, so that maybe you can hang out with us and
we can have a bourbon
and pet the beard. There you go. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners. Copyright 2023. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Genticorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoedown and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And
whatever you do,
I gotta
kids.
say something else next. And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.
You've kind of adopted a slight country accent.
Well, because I've been talking to two dudes from Kentucky for the last hour.
I love it. Her daughter's making her debut on the podcast right out of the gate.
Right in the background, lurking like a weirdo.
Got the daughter and the dogs all in one fell swoop today.
Thankfully, the dogs shut up. Yeah, all right. So we're going to share our weekly pick and the grinning, and we share our picks for whose music is making us grin the most this week. Did you already say that?
I did. That's okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
All right. But it might be new artists, might be old.
But you can't have hiccups when we're recording a podcast.
Yeah.
Go play in traffic.